Hi, and welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet, a weekly program providing you with the latest information, resources, services, and community efforts taking place locally here in the Bronx and virtually. I'm your host, Kibin Alleyne. Coming up, approximately 600 schools in Puerto Rico have been shut down, and that is just one of the many challenges facing the island. Founder of the Organization for Culture of Hispanic Origins joins me for a discussion on how these changes have affected the island. Does the U.S. play a major role in the closure of these schools? Then, outdoor dining was a lifesaver for many New York City restaurants during the pandemic, but now many restaurant owners have returned back to the traditional dining experience, resulting in an increased number of abandoned dining structures across the city. Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance joined me to discuss the removal of these structures and the changes that are coming to outdoor dining. Is outdoor dining still needed for the success of a New York City restaurant? After that, launching several programs focusing on education and youth development, CEO and founder of Nino de la Caridad joined me to discuss how her organization aims to support Bronx children. How will these programs support education in the Bronx? And finally, the Bronx Documentary Center offers a program aimed to provide film opportunities to traditionally underrepresented documentary filmmakers. A filmmaker and former participant joined me to discuss the mission and the benefits of the BDC Film Fellowship program. What can filmmakers expect when they join this program? So please stick around. Open BxRx Tuesday starts now. Welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Kibin Alleyne, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Our first guest previously joined the show to discuss Puerto Rico and the fight for independence. Walter Aloma, president of the Organization for Culture of Hispanic Origins, joins me again today to discuss some challenges the island of Puerto Rico continues to face. Walter, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be on again.
Now, for those who don't know, can you actually tell us a little bit more about your organization?
We are a nonprofit organization, and we provide cultural, educational, and mental health services to the community. And most of the work that we do, we provide these services in particular to the Puerto Rican community. And we do work here in the United States, all over, up and down the East Coast, as well as Puerto Rico.
So today we're going to talk about something that I thought was pretty shocking, and that was the closure of several schools, hundreds of schools in Puerto Rico. Can you tell me about that and what they're actually currently facing with the closure of these schools?
Okay, no problem. Well, over the last 10 years, approximately 600 schools have closed due to the economic crisis and austerity measures. And the problem with these conditions is that it has displaced over 250,000 students, in particular those who have special needs, with nowhere to go. And of course, without any education, there's no future for the people of Puerto Rico. And some people can actually make it to other schools. So now we have an issue of overcrowding and overpopulating these schools, which also contributes to some more problems while trying to learn the curriculum in Puerto Rico. So, these are creating long-standing problems because without education, there is no future for the people.
Now, can you let us know, are these elementary schools that are being affected, or is this like higher education?
It's a wide range of schools. It's starting from the elementary all the way up to high school, even to some of the universities as well. And again, it leads to overcrowding, and it leads to difficulties learning. And it doesn't leave much of a future for the people of Puerto Rico when you have little or no education.
Now, can you explain how, or if it's even possible, how is the U.S. involved in the closure of these schools?
Well, the U.S. actually controls what happens in Puerto Rico. They control the funding that goes on in Puerto Rico. They control the politics that happens in Puerto Rico. So the United States is pretty much responsible for everything that goes on the island. The current government of Puerto Rico is basically just a dummy government. They are allowed to run the small day-to-day operations, but when it comes to any major issues, any major decisions that have to be made regarding the economy or politics, it's the United States that steps in and they control what's happening. Now, unfortunately, funding is provided by the United States to Puerto Rico in order to continue with these programs. So, due to our so-called debt that Puerto Rico owes, they decided that that's where the money will come from. Basically, they're going to continue to close these institutions of learning, and so as a way to save money and repay this so-called debt that Puerto Rico owes the United States.
Now, what has the response been like for the people who have been affected by the closure of these schools? Like, were you able to maybe speak to some people in Puerto Rico and to get their ideas on what's happening?
Well, when you speak to the local community, they're up in arms. They're very upset. A lot of these schools also, as well, since they provide like breakfast and lunch, there are places for kids to come and eat. Because there is a bit of an issue in certain areas regarding poverty in Puerto Rico, and of course the education as well. This where there's high poverty, there's high crime. So this has a very heavy impact on the island of Puerto Rico and to the community, and they're very upset. They're very up in arms, and there's a lot of protests all over the island. They were asking for not long ago for the governor to resign, and the current governor of Puerto Rico, Pierre Luisi, it's all happening again. They want the governor to resign as well. Because these so-called politicians are supposed to be in charge or maintaining the welfare of the community, aren't doing their job, and they're basically just going along with anything that the United States says is necessary to pay back this so-called debt.
Now, you talked about it a little bit, how important schools are, but can you explain, how has this affected education and so many other aspects of life for the young people in Puerto Rico?
Well, the young people of Puerto Rico have nowhere to go. I mean, it just basically breaks down that way. You wake up in the morning and you have nowhere to go. There's nothing for you to do. So, again, without education, without even a basic high school diploma, it's very difficult to get a job anywhere. Whether it's working at McDonald's, flipping burgers, or some other institution. So, without a basic education, there is really no future for the youth of Puerto Rico. And the question is, well, what's going to happen in the long term? What's going to happen to our people, to our community, when there's no education for them? And again, also, it provided some food, for the community as well, because there is an issue of poverty on the island, and for some students that was their breakfast, that was their lunch, they had their snacks there, as well as after school programs. Also, what about the children with special needs? These are children that are just left out and twisting in the wind, and there's no relief for them in sight. So we have many issues that are affecting the island, and there's no relief in sight.
Now, what will it take for these schools to reopen?
Well, that's what's difficult. In order for these schools to reopen, basically the people are going to have to get involved, because what's currently happening right now is that these schools have become available to the general public. So there's two things that the people can do. If you have the means, this is pertaining to people on the island or the diaspora. You can actually petition or apply to the government of Puerto Rico, and you can actually reopen one of these schools as a school, or if you can turn it into a community center or a shelter for domestic violence or mental health programs. The government can actually lease you these schools and allow you to turn it around and provide to the community. Or you can simply approach the mayor of a particular town and find out what school is closed. And you can actually, it's possible where you can actually work something out with the mayor of the particular town, and you can be allowed to reopen the schools and be able to give back to the community.
Now, that's just one thing that's affecting the community. But as I mentioned, there's so many things happening in Puerto Rico. I want to talk a little bit about Vieques, Puerto Rico. Can you explain what's happening there as well?
Well, Vieques, Puerto Rico, that's something that's been happening, Chacho, since the 1940s. So basically, right around World War II, the U.S. Navy and the Marines, they took over the island of Vieques, basically approximately something about 65% of the island, and they used it to practice war games, bombing maneuvers. And from the 1940s until 2003, they've dropped over 80 million pounds of ordinances on the island, on the ocean. And since they left in 2003, they have yet to clean up the island of Puerto Rico, or of the island of Vieques. So this island right now has the highest cancer rate in all of Puerto Rico, due to these ordinances that have been, that have been left on the island and in the ocean, basically just rotting away over the last 60 years.
Now, I am like so shocked to see this. What does this say about how, the US feels about the community of people that live in this area?
Well, it's a slap in the face. I mean, it's telling the people of Vieques and the people of Puerto Rico that they do not matter. They would never do that here. They would never take over the island of Manhattan and drop and practice bombing maneuvers in the Bronx and in Queens, and cram everybody into the center of Manhattan. This is basically something that's been going on for the last 60 years. And there's even a study by Dr. Jorge Colon from the University of Puerto Rico back in 1999, and where he talks about 35% of the population have toxic levels of mercury, 55% have lead, 69% have arsenic, 69% has cadmium, and 90% of the population has aluminum and antimony in their system. Now, supposedly there was a bill that's supposed to be passed, the Vieques Recovery and Development Act, back in 2011, that was supposed to provide these people with medical treatment in order, to because of the bombing that, and the contamination that's happened over the 60 years. And that bill is still sitting in Congress.
Wow. Now, what can people do, one, to, I guess, bring the bill back, and then just overall to help with the situation? Because I actually think it's pretty terrible that this is still, an issue for so many people living on the island.
Well, there are meetings that the Navy has on the island of Vieques. They have them pretty much about every 4 months, 3 to 4 months, and people can actually attend these sessions. They had them online for a while because of COVID, but now they're back to having meetings in person. So you can actually go to these meetings and you can speak your mind, and you can talk to the U.S. Navy, and you can find out about what their current process is, what their so-called progress is, and you can express your opinions on what you feel would be the best way to decontaminate or to clean up the island.
Now, the Bronx has a large Puerto Rican community here. Can you just explain what can they do to support this issue or to just learn more?
Absolutely. Well, whether you're in the Bronx, Florida, California, if you're Puerto Rican and you want to get involved, you can find out about the Vieques Restoration Advisory Board meetings. Now, there's an email. It's Vieques Restoration Program at jacobs.com. You can send them an email regarding the cleanup of Vieques, and you can tell them that you're interested in getting involved. You want to know more about these meetings, and you want to know what you can do. And that sends an email to the restoration program, which is part of the U.S. Navy and the EPA. You can get in touch with them, and they can tell you what it is that you need to do to get involved, when the meetings are, the times when the meetings are available, and you can pretty much just get involved, and you have the opportunity to share your thoughts and your feelings regarding the cleanup, what you think can and should be done, and what the next steps are.
Now, how can people learn more about your organization?
Well, if anybody wants to know a little bit more about what we do and who I am, you can go to www.theocho.net. That's THEOCHO.net. Or you can email us at theocho.net@gmail.com. And you can send me any questions, or you can ask me anything that any questions that you may have. And you can go to our website and you can see some of the work that we've done regarding Puerto Rico and the services that we provide.
All right, Walter, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure we'll have you on again.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday. Welcome back. Outdoor dining was a lifesaver for many New York City restaurants during the pandemic, but as the city returns to normal, several restaurants no longer use their outdoor seating to serve New Yorkers, which has resulted in the increased numbers of abandoned structures. Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, Andrew Rigie, joins me to discuss the changes coming to the world of outdoor dining. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, can you first explain the wonders outdoor dining did for many New York City restaurants during and even shortly after the pandemic?
Absolutely. I mean, we all remember how just devastating the city was during the worst of the pandemic. We are social creatures. We're supposed to socialize, and we are then told to be socially distant. So in June of 2020, when outdoor dining kicked off, it allowed people to come out of their homes, out of their apartments, and actually eat, drink, and socialize and be close outdoors in a safe environment. So I really think it gave us hope as a city. And of course, it's responsible for really saving thousands and thousands of small businesses throughout the five boroughs and credited with bringing back about 100,000 jobs.
Now, as I mentioned, things slowly started to return back to what we were used to. And even myself, now that I'm thinking about it, now when I do go out to restaurants, a lot of us are sitting inside again, which means that, a lot of structures have been abandoned. Can you explain the mayor's efforts to address, what's been happening?
Yeah, something we knew as restaurants opened up, more people are comfortable dining indoors. Fewer people may be dining outdoors, especially if it's rainy or freezing or really hot out. So, we need to make sure that we have outdoor dining because people still love it and it's a wonderful program. But we also have to make sure that if a restaurant built a structure during the pandemic and they're no longer using it, or in the case of what's happened, many restaurants unfortunately have closed as a result of the pandemic. These structures have remained up and they're abandoned and they're worn down. So Mayor Adams and the city, rightfully so, are going out. They're tearing down those outdoor dining structures that have been abandoned because the restaurant unfortunately closed. And they're also going to go around and look at other structures that are abandoned, dilapidated, or really aren't used so they can tear them down and make sure that the program is being used the way that it's intended.
Now, you talked a little bit about the process, but what about those restaurants that are still open who just prefer to use indoor dining? Will the city contact them and ask them about it, or how is that process going to look like?
So right now we're kind of in limbo actually because we are still operating under the temporary emergency program, but the city is in the process of going through the legislative and then the rulemaking process to create a new permanent outdoor dining system that's more standardized, more sustainable, that'll work for the long term. So once that program is official and restaurants can apply, be approved, and then transition into it, I think a lot of the restaurants that have been participating under the emergency temporary program that aren't really using it are just going to have to remove all their stuff because that will no longer be a legit program. So essentially, people that want to continue to participate can, but there's a process for it. And those restaurants that don't want to will just have to remove what they have.
Now, is abandoned outdoor dining structures, is that a common occurrence throughout the city? And are there specific boroughs that are more affected by this?
I think it's probably proportional. We don't know the exact numbers, but based on how many outdoor dining structures there are in each borough. So they're definitely out there. Unfortunately, a lot of restaurants did shutter during the pandemic. So that's the result of a lot of them. Others really, we just need restaurateurs if they're not really using them and someone thinks or they look abandoned, they should come down. So they're definitely throughout the five boroughs, but now the city is really going to focus on going out, tearing them down. I think there is almost 25 initial structures they were taking down or have taken down already, and more to come.
Now, after seeing the success, what are some reasons store owners have for abandoning their outdoor dining setups? And you mentioned that some of them have closed down, but is it costly to have an outdoor dining setup? Is it a lot of maintenance? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
There's certainly maintenance. I think one of the challenges that we have to remember is that when outdoor dining was put out there, this was in the midst of the worst pandemic, a horrible crisis. Our local restaurateurs essentially had no money at all. They were losing everything they had. So they tried to put these outdoor dining structures up with limited to no resources, taking debt on their credit cards. So they weren't all made of like pressurized wood and other types of materials that would stand up to the elements. And no one thought back in June of 2020 that we would be here in, or would have been in June 2022, still in a pandemic. So I think the weather, winter, summer, and everything else just being out on the streets wore many of them down. So yes, the cost for upkeep can be a bit more pricey, especially when your business is struggling so much. And there hasn't always been clear and direct standards for restaurants about what they can do, what they can't do, what the aesthetics of these structures need to look like. So, I always say it's kind of tough to think about this in a permanent or current situation when we have to think or we need to tell a story about how we got here.
Now, can you explain maybe the unique experience or challenge that maybe some lower income area restaurants are facing in regards to outdoor dining? Because I know when I walk through Manhattan, they have some really, really beautiful, like intricate outdoor dining structures. And so I'm sure that they, obviously get a lot of use out of that. But, what is that experience like for maybe a lower income restaurant, let's say in the Bronx?
Yeah, so one of the great things about outdoor dining under this emergency program, it became more equitable. We have a lot more outdoor dining in the Bronx than we did pre-pandemic under the traditional sidewalk cafe program because it was cost prohibitive. And a lot of restaurants were actually zoned out of even having outdoor dining if they wanted to try to afford it. So a lot more restaurants in the Bronx, thankfully, have been able to participate. But of course, if you're a small business anywhere, if you are a struggling business, it is going to be more difficult to spend a lot of money, particularly on the roadway seating. The sidewalk, fortunately, it's tables and chairs. It's a bit less money. It's a little bit easier to keep clean, to maintain it than if you have a physical structure on the roadway. But in different neighborhoods, it's also an equity about garbage. We need to make sure the city is picking up the garbage effectively. The carters are picking up the garbage timely and effectively because people don't want to dine outdoors if the streets are dirty. We need to make sure that the streets are safe. Also depending on where the restaurant is located, the amount of, vehicle traffic going by can also impact the overall dining experience. But we've actually seen under the train Ellen areas, you never pre-pandemic could have outdoor dining, but you had it under the train now. And actually some of these were really successful. So I think it's amazing just to see what we can do when we rethink the streetscape and when we let our restaurants be creative. But certainly without a lot of resources, if you're in an area that may not be as pleasant to dine outdoors on, you probably won't have as successful outdoor dining. But restaurants have been doing a great job.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the open restaurants program that did start, during the pandemic. Is this going to be at all affected, by this new structure or this new wave of outdoor dining that's coming to New York City?
Yeah, so we are still more than 2 years later operating under the temporary emergency open restaurants program that was developed and launched in June of 2020 in response to the pandemic. Now the city council is working with the Adams administration on developing standards for a permanent outdoor dining program that'll allow you to use the sidewalk. I think if people want to think what it'll look like, if they remember before the pandemic what sidewalk cafes look like, it'll look similar. The only thing is we want the bureaucracy, the red tape, the big expenses for small businesses to be removed. So the public won't really notice much of a difference, but the red tape for the small business owner will be cut, and that will be really good. The roadway, which is a novel, a new program, I think it's going to look a little bit more different. You're not going to have as many fully enclosed structures in the roadway. You're going to have upgraded building materials and different styles that are more standardized, more sustainable, but allow restaurants to still hopefully be able to use their likeness, their colors, their logos and everything. So it looks really nice. Put some plants out there, etc. So It's still going through the process of what it will ultimately look like, but I think something that people really can be proud of and restaurants want and people want to dine in and people feel good about them in their communities.
So you mentioned sustainability. Can you explain, what you mean by that and how can, these outdoor structures and these restaurants, achieve sustainability with their outdoor dining?
Absolutely. So, one, we need it to just be sustainable in the sense that the program can be sustained, that it works for restaurants, it works for customers, it works for workers, it works for the communities they serve. So, sustainable in that sense. But then also looking at the types of materials that are being used. Are there different types of salvage products, recycled products that can be built into what is being used in the future? We also have to look at design guidelines. Does it allow storm drain water to get by so it can go into the storm drains, and other types of building and design that, again, use sustainable products, allows the program to be successful so it is sustainable, and it also is sustainable in the sense that it works with the other types of uses, whether it's bike lanes or storm drain water and or cleaning the sidewalk, cleaning the roadway.
Now, how can people stay up to date with your organization?
You can go to our website, which is thenycalliance.org. You can also find us on every social media channel, New York City Hospitality Alliance or the NYC Alliance. You can join our newsletter on our website, and we'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on within the hospitality industry from the small business perspective.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. In an effort to support Bronx youth, CEO and founder of Nino de la Caridad, Dr. Denise Nuñez, joins me now to discuss her program and the way Bronx youth can get involved. Dr. Nuñez, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation.
Now, before we jump into talking about all the programs you lead, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, yes, thank you. So I am a pediatric intensivist. I'm a critical care physician, which means that I'm a doctor specialized in the intensive care unit, and also a pediatrician. And I've been working in the Bronx for over 10 years now, with youth in the Bronx and with different families, from preventive care to really, really complicated cases. And that's what led me to go back, because normally a critical care physician actually stays in the hospital and works in the ICU, and they don't work directly with the community. We're taking care of like very critical patients that are, sorry to say, but kind of dying, right? Very critical, ill. And but seeing that there were so many things happening in the ICU that could have been prevented at the community level, I decided to go to the community and open a practice, a pediatric practice, about 10 years ago. And now it's become, we have several practices in the Bronx and in Manhattan, and we work directly with the community, especially with our youth.
Now, as you mentioned, that's not the only thing that you're doing in the community. You also have a foundation called Nino de la Caridad. I hope I'm saying that, the way it should be sounding. But can you tell us a little bit more about your foundation?
Yes, thank you. So this foundation started a couple years ago with actually my family after I helped my kids get into college. It was just for me, it was a huge process, trying to get them, helping them with the application process. And I was so intrigued of how difficult it was for my kids to get into not the entire process. So I went back to my community and I was asking, all these questions to these youth, and we created some questionnaires for all our parents, and just wanted to see how many kids were getting finishing high school around my area. Because at that same time, I was having I had a very rough experience with two of the youth that I loved at that time. I still follow them, but there was a 15-year-old boy, that teenager that had a scholarship for baseball, and it was came from Dominican Republic. And about 6 months into it, he was having some behavioral issues, right? And 9 months into it, I lost him to drugs. I also have a 12-year-old that I was following her, taking care of her, and having like one-to-one conversations because she was also using drugs. So this experience, plus the experience I was having with my kids, I was very intrigued on how could myself as a pediatrician who's having so much contact with all these youth, right, in the community, how could I help them? And that's how we started this just non-for-profit, this sort of program to try to help kids get into college in the basement of our practice. Started about 5 years ago, and from there we created several programs to help and empower our youth and trying to improve their quality of life, especially to our Hispanic community, through engaging them through different education activities and resources that they need in order to become leaders and help the community. So that's how our foundation started, and now we serve hundreds and hundreds of youth and from our community.
Now, another way you serve the youth is by this partnership that you have with BronxNet, which is pretty awesome. It's called Leaders of the Future. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program?
Yes. One day I normally, especially with COVID, I'm interviewed a lot for different health situations, and COVID was one of them. And BronxNet actually interviewed me, and once we were in a testing facility, and there were some issues, and in the middle of the issues, I was kind of live for an interview. And after that, I was offered to create a program, and I was just, gave it some thought. I said, how can I use this program to engage our students and help them build some skills, some leadership skills, public speaking skills? And BronxNet was kind enough to give us this opportunity of creating the program, the TV show called Leaders of the Future, where we help, the purpose is to help our kids create these skills like leadership skills and public speaking, and to have a voice, right? To have a voice, to be heard. And thanks to BronxNet, we are able to have this show. It's a 30-minute show every other Thursday. And the kids, the teenagers, I call them kids. They can be older. I still call them kids. But these teenagers, help with the help of BronxNet. They produce the show. They write some the segments. They present the show. I'm really rarely on it, only when they ask me some health questions. But it's a great opportunity to get all these kids involved in something that's so powerful, like your voice, right? So they feel they're so valued, and it keeps them off the streets. It keeps them They create things. It's just so engaging and it's loving. And these kids are able, with this program they were able to meet people. They're able to look at careers in a different way. And it really has helped them throughout their high school process and actually get them into college. So it's an amazing opportunity that BronxNet has given us, and we're very, very grateful for it.
So that one focuses a little bit more on the teenagers and older kids, but you also have something that's targeted for younger children, and it's called the Caterpillar Homework Club. Can you tell us more about that program?
Yes. So this program came about. This is when we started the Nino La Caridad and Leaders of the Future program. We realized that we were a little bit late when we were trying to get our kids to finish their high schools and get into college. We needed to kind of catch these kids a little bit younger. And get them involved in the foundation. And one of as a pediatrician, one of the things that I found taking care of these patients was that our kids with a Latino last name, and here in the Bronx, if you have some issues with reading or writing, you're right away kind of diagnosed with this learning disability. And I went a little bit deeper into that and realized, parents don't have the capacity. Some of them don't have the capacity of leaving their jobs in the afternoons and coming to help their kids with homeworks, or they just don't know the language, right? And there's a language barrier. And then the parents also don't communicate as well with the teachers and try to make a plan and see how they can help their kids. So we decided to create this program named Caterpillar Homework Club, where we partnered with different colleges and universities around the area, and we created an internship program with juniors and seniors, and they come to our foundation and they help kids do their homework. They also become kind of that liaison between the parent and the teacher, and they have this monthly meetings with the teacher to see how their kids are doing. So there's two students for every intern, and they come in the afternoons and help them with homework, with some reading skills, and make sure these kids are successful in their academic year. So this is a completely free program for our second graders to eighth graders, and that helps them get into the Leaders of the Future, which starts at ninth grade.
Now, as you mentioned, this program does include the parent a little bit, and I think that's pretty uncommon and really unique. Can you tell me about the decision to have parents play an active role in this program?
Well, parents' engagement is very critical to the success of our students. They need to understand, they need to be involved. And if we don't have them involved, the kids are not going to come. We're not going to give their best. So parents, all these youth and kids seeing their parents involved in these programs makes a big difference. We teach them financial literacy. We make them understand the whole process of college. Why is it important to go to college? So it's very important to have our parents involved. They volunteer. We teach them. We actually help them learn English too. We have English classes for them at nighttime and weekends. So this is just, it's a family. It's a family foundation. It starts from the parents, and continue with the kids. So they are very critical in the success of our students. And if we don't have them involved, I don't think if we wouldn't have the success we have right now. So yes, it's our parents need to participate. They need to volunteer in order for their kids to be involved in our program.
And can you talk about the importance of having, these Bronx children interact with college students? Some of them go to Fordham University and, just really good schools in the Bronx. Why was that important to have these children interact with people who are in college?
Well, it inspires them, right? So you have to see. It's good to have a role model, and it's amazing to have a young person that's in college being that role model for you. So these kids are around the Bronx. There are a lot of distractors, starting from your phone, right? You see so many things going on. Then from what's going on right now with gangs and drugs, and kids see that every single second of their life. It's amazing to have these young individuals that are in college, experiencing college, coming to these youth and telling them what they're doing and inspiring these young students. So they are role models for these students, much needed, and that's what we want them to become. So it's an amazing thing having these youth participate, these college students participate in these programs because of that.
Now, how can people learn more about all of the programs that you offer?
We have it's in our website. It's in Spanish, Nino la Caridad.com, and they can also call our our number. It's 917-688-1098, and we will guide them through all the programs we have. But if they go on the website, they can actually register. They can be a volunteer or register for any of the programs we have there.
All right. Dr. Nuñez, thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you so much for this great opportunity. Thank you.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday. Welcome back. The Bronx Documentary Center is offering a program aimed to provide film opportunities to traditionally underrepresented documentary filmmakers. The deadline to apply for the Film Fellowship program is September 1st. Filmmaker and former participant Daniela Amézquita joins me to discuss the program and what Bronx filmmakers can expect to learn from this program. Daniela, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation.
Now, can you start off by telling us about the organization, the Bronx Documentary Center?
Sure. The Bronx Documentary Center is a nonprofit organization which takes care takes care of people who would like to learn about photography. So they have the Bronx Junior Photography League and the Senior League, and they also have a gallery, and they also have the Film Fellowship program, which I was part of.
Now, can you actually tell us how you actually got involved with the center?
Yes, like I started at the International Center of Photography, and while I was studying there, I knew about the Bronx Documentary Center, and well, was the when the pandemic started and we were on quarantine, like I noticed about the program and I decided to apply with the final project I did at ICP. That is the school where I was studying at. And that is how I applied and decided that maybe I have like this project that is more like a video and photography related, and why not to make it as a documentary? And that is how I encourage myself to apply.
Now, one of the programs the organization offers is called the BDC Film Fellows. Can you tell me more about that program?
Of course, well, the film fellowship from the Bronx Documentary Center lasts 1 year, and during that year, they provide you with all the materials you need, like to make a short documentary. So they gave you the camera, the audio equipment, gave you tripods and whatever you need, like from equipment. Even if you ask for something like you have creatively an idea of I need this lens or I need this lighting, like they can provide it to you. So that's a very important thing I think about the program. That you don't have to worry of anything about equipment because they give you all, and also they teach you how to use it. That's something very important as well. And they give you lessons about storytelling with also other filmmakers and about editing and about how to start the project, how to pre-produce it, produce it, and post-produce it. So it's a very complete, I think, program. So in case you don't know anything about how to make a film and you only have the idea of what would you like to do, they teach you everything. So I think that's why it's a great program. Like if you have these ideas to do.
Yeah, I think it sounds really cool. Now, another thing that's really cool is that it is a focus on underrepresented Bronx filmmakers. Why do you think these filmmakers are often underrepresented when it comes to film and just the industry of documenting?
Well, as a woman, I think like this is something that I've noticed through all my career. I'm 34 years old, and I have like a long path, like working in lens-based career, and I can tell you that at least we as women are not represented at all. I think like we have winning spaces during all this time, but I think it's not enough, and that is something that is very important about these kind of programs. For example, in my cohort, the year that it was 2020, 2021, the four fellows, we all were women. So it was a very nice opportunity also for us, like to make like this safe space about talking about like the importance of women to be represented and also like to talk about womanhood and these topics since our voices not like talk by men. So I think that is why it's very important to have these spaces.
I think that's actually really, really cool. And I'm so happy that you shared that. Can you talk about maybe some of the themes that were explored, during your time when you were a filmmaker, and maybe some of the other themes that the other filmmakers explored due to their backgrounds?
Sure. Like for example, in my with my fellow um with my fellow friends at the BDC Film Fellowship, we talked about a lot of our personal experiences with our parents, mostly with our fathers. So that was a very important topic. Also about family and how we, as for example, Latinos living and growing up here in New York, like how culturally, like these families are, we are growing up like with these families, Latin American families or Caribbean families, in a place like this, like in this country, and also about migration. That is a very important topic, I think, like here in New York City and in all around the world. Um, and I've seen that mainly are like the general topics. I think like because my cohort was during the pandemic, like our topics were very intimate because it was a time of reflection, because we were inside of homes, so everything was from inside of hearts, and so. But those are the main. Well, not the main, but those are the topics that we explore as filmmakers.
That's really cool. Now, I think it's also really cool that the program gives a lot of these filmmakers a chance to gain employment in these creative industries. Can you tell me, why that was so important to include in a program like this?
I think like this is important because it's a way like to keep us connected like with the industry, because it's not that easy if you are not part of it. So they gave us not only the material to work, but also like the people to know, if we want to have more feedback, or if we are curious about something, and that the Bronx Documentary Center have all these resources of people that are very interested also into teach and to share with us like their uh, uh, life stories and career. So that also enriches a lot the program, because otherwise maybe if we didn't study that at college or whatever, like maybe in another school or in some kind of any other job, maybe we wouldn't be uh, connected with these people.
So I think this is a really amazing program, and the deadline to apply is September 1st. Where can people go to learn more and apply?
Uh, you can go to the Bronx Documentary Center online page, that is bronxdoc.org, and you can see also there the profiles from the former alumni. That is maybe sometimes I always check on those kind of things, because sometimes like you think like, maybe I am not a good fit for that because maybe I don't know this, or maybe I don't have like the experience or whatever. So it's good to know that I think like all the former alumni have very different kind of interests and careers and experiences. So that is important, like, for you to know, I think. And also you can see all the how can you apply and whatever you need like to submit for the application.
Now, I want you to quickly let us know what's some advice that you would give to somebody who's interested in joining.
Well, my advice is like to work hard. That maybe is something that everybody tells you. But this is really a program that gives you everything. The only thing that you have to do is work. So you don't have to worry at all. And so that's why I think like creatively you have like you are in this safe space, like to really put the hands on the job. And they also encourage you a lot, like to trust in yourself. So I think that is something very important from the program as well, that even if you maybe doubt about your capacity or if you are not creative enough, they are always encouraging you to do it and to trust in yourself. So trust yourself. If they selected you, is because it is a project that deserves attention, and just work hard, and you are going to finish with something that in the future, believe me, that for sure is gonna give you more. It could be a job, or it could be more opportunities. And that is something that I think not all the programs gives you. So
that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that advice, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about the program.
Oh, thank you so much, and please apply.
So that's all for our show today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.